Welcome aboard. You know, more and more people are discovering the fun of boating. Operating a boat opens up whole new worlds for you to enjoy. But along with this fun comes responsibilities. Your first responsibility is to the safety of you and your passengers. You also have a duty to others, both on the water and on shore. Finally, you have an obligation to protect and preserve the environment so future generations can enjoy it. Boating safely and responsibly will help you fully enjoy your time on the water. This video program will show you how to be a safe and courteous boater. You'll see more information in your manual. So while you're watching, feel free to stop and review the manual. Focus on mastering one chapter at a time. We've got a lot to cover, so let's get underway. No matter what type of boat you have, the first step in safe boating is to learn all about your boat. A boat's length determines the equipment you need to comply with federal and state laws. Boat length is measured from the tip of the bow to the stern. That doesn't include an outboard motor or a swim platform, unless the platform is a molded part of a hull. Knowing the type of hull you have and how it handles will help you operate safely. There are two types of boat hulls: displacement hulls and planing hulls. Boats with displacement hulls move through the water by pushing the water aside. They're designed to cut through the water with very little propulsion, but they're limited to lower speeds. Sailboats and cruisers have displacement hulls. This allows them to move smoothly through the water. Boats with planing hulls are designed to glide on top of the water when you apply enough power. These boats may operate like displacement hulls when at rest or moving slowly, but they rise up onto the surface of the water as they move faster. Flat-bottomed and V-bottomed hulls act as planing hulls. Most small power vessels, including personal watercraft, have planing hulls. This allows them to travel rapidly across the water. Now let's take a look at engine types. An outboard is a portable, self-contained package with an engine, gear case, and propeller attached to the transom of the boat. Steering is controlled by a tiller, or steering wheel, that swivels the engine to direct propeller thrust. Inboard engines are four-stroke automotive engines adapted for marine use. They're mounted inside the hull's midsection, or in front of the transom. The engine turns a drive shaft that runs through the bottom of the hull and spins the propeller. Steering is controlled by a rudder. Stern drives are also known as inboard-outboards because they combine the features of inboard and outboard engines. A stern drive's four-stroke engine is mounted inside the boat and attached through the transom to a drive unit. This drive unit resembles the lower section of an outboard. The outdrive, which swivels like an outboard engine, steers the boat. Jet drive engines propel a boat by forcing a jet of water out the back of the boat. Jet boats and personal watercraft have this type of engine. Directing the jet of water steers the boat. In addition to understanding the handling characteristics of your boat, you also need to know the nautical terms that describe its parts. While boats vary greatly in style and shape, the names of their parts stay the same. That also applies to personal watercraft, which the United States Coast Guard includes in the group of inboard boats less than 16 feet long. You may know personal watercraft as jet skis, sea-doos, or wave runners. Personal watercraft are subject to the same regulations as other boats, plus a few more. We'll look at these later. Once you're familiar with boat and boating terminology, you're ready for the next step, preparing to get underway. on a trailer, boating safety begins before you ever leave home. Here are some key things to remember. Secure your vessel to the trailer with several tie-down straps or safety lines to prevent it from shifting. Never trust the bow winch alone to hold your vessel onto the trailer. Put your engine or drive unit in the raised position and secure it. Make sure your trailer won't get away from you by attaching the safety chains between the trailer and the towing vehicle, crisscrossing them under the tongue. Then check the tire pressure on the trailer and make sure the brake lights are working. And when you're on the road, remember that you'll need more time to stop because of the extra weight. When you launch your boat, be sure to get it ready before you back down the ramp. Transfer all your gear and supplies, then disconnect the trailer lights. Remove all tie-down straps and make sure the drain plug is in place. Leave the trailer winch line attached. Tie a rope to the vessel's bow for more control while you launch. When you're ready to launch, back the boat into the water just enough to cover the lower unit. Set the parking brake on the towing vehicle. Then start the engine. If you've got a problem while the boat is still on the trailer, it's easy to pull forward and fix it. After the engine warms up, back the trailer into the water until the vessel floats. Undo the winch line. Put the boat engine in reverse and back slowly off the trailer. When you load your boat, back the trailer into the water so that about 2/3 of the rollers or bumps are submerged. Set the parking brake on the towing vehicle. Move your vessel onto the trailer close enough to the bow winch to attach the line securely. Then finish pulling the vessel onto the trailer with a winch. Trying to load the boat using engine power can erode sediment and dig holes at the base of the ramp. The eroded sediment creates a mound behind the propeller. Trailer tires can get stuck in these holes, and boats can run aground on the mound. Serious accidents can occur when fueling a boat, so always take precautions. Before you fuel, tie your boat securely to the fuel dock. Ask your passengers to leave the boat. Check that fuel lines, connections, and fuel vents are in good condition. Then turn off anything that might cause a spark, such as the engine, fans, or electrical equipment. If you have portable fuel tanks, remove them from the boat and fill them on the dock. Make sure your fire extinguisher is within reach. When you're pumping fuel, keep the fuel pump nozzle in solid contact with the tank opening to prevent static sparks. Fill the tank slowly to avoid spilling fuel into the boat's bilge or into the water. And don't top off the tank. Leave room for gas to expand. Use an oil-absorbent pad to catch drips or spills. After fueling, put the cap on tightly to keep vapors from escaping. Wipe up any spilled fuel. Dispose of the used paper towels or rags properly when you're back on shore. If you have a power ventilation system, turn it on after you fuel. Leave it on for at least 4 minutes before you start your engine. This eliminates gas vapors in the bilge. Before starting the engine, sniff the bilge and engine compartment for fuel vapors. If you smell gas, continue ventilating until the smell is gone. As an extra precaution, install a gas vapor detection and alarm device. When all is clear, start the engine. The same rules apply to fueling a personal watercraft in the water, but there are some additional considerations. First of all, try to refuel a personal watercraft on land whenever possible. If you must refuel at the marina, don't spill any gas or oil. After you've filled up, give the engine compartment a sniff to check for gas fumes. If you do smell gas fumes, find out where they're coming from and get it fixed immediately. Okay, your boat's fueled and you're ready to load up the gang for a cruise. But do you know how many people your boat can carry safely? Look for a capacity plate near the operator's position or on the transom of the boat. This plate indicates the maximum weight capacity or the maximum number of people that the boat can safely carry. This information is very important because overloading can cause your boat to swamp or capsize. On outboard powerboats, the capacity plate also shows the recommended maximum horsepower of the boat. Your boat's motor should never exceed this rating. Before going out, it's always a good idea to leave a float plan with a relative or friend. Send them an email or instant message that covers the 4 W's: who is going, where you're going, what boat you're in, when you are leaving, as well as when you expect to be back. Okay, now that we're ready to go, let's look at operating your boat. At first glance, operating a powerboat may appear simpler than driving a car. You just apply the gas and cruise, right? No road to follow, no traffic lights, no merging traffic or 4-way stops. But when other boats are nearby or conditions are less than ideal, operating a boat safely becomes more challenging. Before you cast off, keep your boat tied to the dock while you warm up the engine and be sure it's running properly. Make sure everyone on board is seated and wearing a life jacket. Then check the departure area for traffic. Now you're ready to cast off. If there's no wind or current, cast off the bow and stern lines. Shift into forward and slowly accelerate, gradually turning your bow away from the dock. If the wind or current is pushing your boat toward the dock, cast off the stern line. Then move and secure the bow line to a mid-boat position on the dock. Shift into forward and turn the steering wheel hard toward the dock. Increase your speed slowly until the stern's well away from the dock. Then cast off the bow line. Back out slowly until you have room to shift into forward and turn away from the dock. If the wind or current direction is away from the dock, cast off the bow and stern lines. If needed, use a paddle or boat hook to keep the boat clear of the dock. Let the wind or current carry the boat away from the dock. Once you're clear, shift into forward and slowly leave the area. When you return to the dock, getting your boat in safely requires a little more skill than going out. As you approach the dock, reduce speed to the minimum you need to be able to steer. Use reverse to bring the boat to a stop well away from the dock. If you can, make your approach into the wind or current, whichever is stronger. This will give you more control. Have the bow and stern lines ready and put your fenders in place. If there's no wind or current, head in at a narrow angle, about 20 degrees. When you get close enough, have a passenger step on shore and secure the stern and bow line. Never try to stop a moving boat with your arms or legs. If the wind or current is pushing you toward the dock, approach slowly, parallel to the dock. Shift into neutral and let the wind or current carry your boat to the dock. Shift into gear briefly if you need to adjust position. Then secure the stern and bow line. If the wind or current direction is away from the dock, approach slowly at a sharp angle, about 40 degrees. Use reverse to stop when you get close to the dock. Then secure the bow line. Shift into forward briefly and slowly turn the steering wheel hard away from the dock, which swings in the stern. Once you're alongside the dock, secure the stern line. Keep in mind that these procedures are for small, single-engine boats. The procedures for large boats, sailboats, or boats with twin engines will vary. There's always a chance that some miscalculation or mishap will cause an operator to be thrown out of the driver's seat. There have been cases where people have been run over by their own boats. That's because an unmanned boat tends to run in hard, fast circles. So all boats and personal watercraft now have an emergency ignition safety switch. The switch has a lanyard with a clip on the end. You just attach the clip to your wrist or your life jacket. Then if you're thrown out of your seat, the lanyard is pulled from the switch, which cuts off the engine. Remember, the safety switch only works if you do your part, so clip it on. However, there are several other situations where propeller strikes may occur. We'll look at how to avoid them next. If you've ever seen a propeller strike accident, you know that you want to do everything in your power to prevent one. They can be gruesome. Anyone in the water around a boat is a potential victim, and most accidents can be prevented if you follow a few simple safety practices. To start with, never run your engine while passengers are boarding or disembarking. Occasionally, people do slip and fall into the water when going between the boat and dock, and the result could be tragic if your propeller is spinning. Once everyone's on board, make sure they're seated properly so they won't end up in the water by accident. Don't allow anyone to sit on a seat back or on the gunwale, transom, or bow. If you have children on board, assign a responsible adult to watch them at all times. Before you start your engine, make sure it's in neutral to avoid jolting your passengers and sending someone over the transom. Also, if you leave the operator's seat, take the lanyard with you so that no one else can accidentally start the engine. And remember, if you stop to let your passengers enjoy the water, make sure everyone's on board before you start the engine. Well, that takes care of you and your passengers, but you still have to be on the lookout for other people in the water. Operator inattention and carelessness are the primary causes of propeller strikes. Always slow down when you approach busy areas and anchorages. In these areas, you need to be extra alert for swimmers and divers. Learn to recognize warning buoys that mark swimming and other hazardous areas. Steer clear of these locations. And keep an eye out for the red and white diagonally striped or blue and white alpha flags. These let you know that divers are in the water. You need to stay well away from these flags. Okay, now it's time to learn the rules for safe navigation. The first rule of safe navigation is keep a sharp lookout at all times for other boats, as well as water hazards, fishermen, skiers, and others enjoying the water. It's one of the most important navigation rules. The second rule is maintain a safe speed. That's determined by a number of factors, including wind, water conditions, visibility, and surrounding boat traffic. There's also an important concept that you need to understand about the rules of the road out here. On land, we say that one car has the right of way over another, but on the water, there's a slightly different concept. When you encounter another boat, you are either the stand-on vessel or the give-way vessel. The stand-on vessel is the boat or personal watercraft that must maintain its course and speed. The give-way vessel is required to take action to avoid collision by keeping clear of the stand-on vessel. If you are the give-way vessel, don't wait until the last minute. Slow down, turn, or stop as soon as you see you are on course to meet another boat. Now, having said that, it's the responsibility of both boat operators to take action to avoid a collision by being alert and driving defensively. Okay, now let's go out on the lake. And this time, think like you're the operator. As we come across various watercraft, see if you know how to respond. But keep in mind that we've exaggerated these scenes just a little bit for the video. In real life, you always want to stay as far away from other boats as possible. Here comes the first one. A boat's cutting across our path from the right. What do? The rule here is that the boat approaching you from the right is the stand-on vessel. It should maintain course and speed. You're the give-way vessel. you need to slow down and veer to the right, passing behind the boat. We're cruising head-on toward another boat. What do you do now? Well, in this situation, neither boat is the stand-on vessel. Both of you give way and pass on the right. Now we're coming up behind someone. Who's the stand-on boat here? And what's the correct way to pass this boater? The boat you're passing is the stand-on vessel. You may pass on either the right or the left. Be sure to stay out of the other boater's way once you've passed. Now we see a sailboat, and it looks like we're on a collision course. What do? A sailboat under sail is less maneuverable than your powerboat, so it's always the stand-on vessel. This is true whether you're meeting it head-on or are crossing its path. You should slow down or pass behind it. And what about personal watercraft? Do they always have to give way because they're so small and maneuverable? Well, personal watercraft operate under the same rules as motorboats. So in this case, the personal watercraft is on your right, and so it is the stand-on vessel. Give way and let the personal watercraft pass. But because personal watercraft are so maneuverable, you need to be especially alert when you're on or around them. Barges, on the other hand, present a safety concern because they are not very maneuverable. Ranging up to a quarter-mile long, barge tows are difficult to steer, hard to stop, and have a dangerous blind spot in front. What happens if you encounter one of these? Are you going to cross your path? No way. Large vessels are less maneuverable than small craft and can take a mile to come to a stop, so stay out of their way. No matter where you're boating, the most dangerous time to be out is at dusk and after dark. Did you know that the major cause of accidents after dark is the lack of proper lighting? So if you're boating at night, make sure all of your required lights are working. Now let's look at some of the most common night navigational lights for the recreational boater. Side lights are red and green. Red on the port or left side, green on the starboard or right side. The stern light is a white light at the rear of the boat. The masthead light is a white light that shines forward and to both sides. It's located on the mast of a sailboat or on the top of a large powerboat. The all-round white light is a white light that can be seen by other boats from any direction. It's also sometimes called an anchor light. Most recreational powerboats have side lights and an all-round white light. This satisfies the law for powerboats less than 39 feet long. Knowing where lights are located is important. They'll tell you which way a boat is headed in the dark. Sometimes they'll show you what kind of vessel it is. Now let's head back out on the lake and test what you've learned. Okay, a boat's approaching ahead. We see green and white lights. What do? Green and white lights are the starboard and stern lights. That tells you a boat's headed across your path from your port side. So you're the stand-on vessel and should maintain course and speed. But you still need to be alert in case the other operator doesn't see you or know the rules of the road. Now we are approaching a single white light. Do you stand on or give way? Remember, the white light is the stern light. That means you're overtaking a boat, either moving or anchored, and it's the stand-on vessel. You can go around it on either side. Red and white lights ahead this time. What do? Since the red light is the port light, you know a boat's headed across your path on your starboard side. You're the give-way vessel. Now we're coming up on a single red light. What does that indicate, and what do? If you see only a red or green light, it means it's a sailboat, and you know that you always give way to a sailboat. These are some of the more common traffic situations that boaters encounter. You can find rules for other scenarios in the U.S. Coast Guard's publication, Navigation Rules. Now let's look at some navigation aids. Buoy Buoys and markers are the traffic signs of the waterways. These navigation aids also identify dangerous or restricted areas. They give directions and information. On the water, you'll encounter two types of marking systems. Regulatory markers tell you how to behave. They're enforced by law. Lateral markers mark safe water areas. Regulatory markers use simple shapes to help you understand their meaning, even from a distance. A diamond shape with a cross means keep out. You'll see these around areas where boats are not allowed, such as swimming areas or industrial sites. A circle marks a controlled area, such as a no-wake zone. An open diamond means danger, such as a shallow area, rocks or stumps. Lateral markers are special channel buoys. They define the lateral system of navigation on inland waterways. Red right returning is a phrase used in this situation. It means the red markers, whether they are buoys or lights, will always be on your right when you return to port or head upstream. If you're traveling downstream or leaving port, green will be on your right. The Intracoastal Waterway, or ICW, is a chain of local channels linked together to provide an inland passage on the Gulf and Atlantic coasts. Channels that are a part of the ICW are identified by yellow symbols on channel buoys and markers. If you're following the ICW clockwise from New Jersey, any marker displaying a yellow triangle should be passed by keeping it on the starboard or right side of the boat. Any marker displaying a yellow square should be passed by keeping it on the port or left side of the boat. One thing to remember about all marker buoys, you can't assume that their placement is 100% accurate. Currents and damage from watercraft can move buoys, so proceed with caution. Let's say that you've been cruising a while and you decide to stop and fish, or swim, or just relax. The ideal place is a well-protected area with plenty of room, adequate depth, and a sandy or muddy bottom. Start by heading slowly into the wind or current to a position upwind or up current of where you actually want to be. Then stop the boat and lower the anchor over the bow to the bottom. Next, slowly back away downwind or down current, letting out about 7 to 10 times as much line as the depth of the water, depending on the wind and wave size. Then secure the line to a bow cleat and pull on the anchor line to make sure the anchor's set. Never anchor from the stern because it can cause the boat to swamp. The bow is designed to ride through waves. The stern isn't. To retrieve the anchor, move the boat directly over the anchor while pulling in the line. Now you know why boating isn't as simple as it looks. It takes a fair amount of knowledge to be a good skipper, even just for pleasure boating. And if you operate a personal watercraft, there are a few more things that you need to keep in mind. Personal watercraft offer a unique and exciting boating experience, but they also present some special challenges to their operators. Accidents can happen because personal watercraft are so fast and maneuverable. It's easy to get in harm's way if you're not paying attention, or if you don't understand how a personal watercraft works. Let's look at how a personal watercraft operates. Water is drawn into the pump housing where an impeller pressurizes the water and forces it out a nozzle at the rear of the craft, pushing the vessel forward. Stay clear of the steering nozzle when it's operating. Its high-velocity water jet can cause severe internal injuries. For this reason, anyone riding a personal watercraft should wear a wetsuit or other clothing that provides similar protection. On all personal watercraft, the nozzle is also the steering mechanism. You steer by changing the direction of the nozzle. And on this type of vessel, you need power to steer. If you allow the engine to return to idle or shut off while you're in the process of maneuvering, you will lose all steering control. You'll just keep going in the direction you were headed before you lost power. Because you know you can take a spill, there are 3 critical pieces of safety equipment. First, a life jacket or personal flotation device is absolutely essential when you're on a personal watercraft. Most riders favor a Type 3 jacket because it's the least restrictive. Second is your ignition safety switch. All personal watercraft now come equipped with this. You attach yourself to the safety switch with a lanyard. If the lanyard is yanked from the switch, the engine will shut off. And whenever you leave the operator's position, detach the lanyard from the switch so that no one else can start your vessel. This safety device is so critical that it's illegal to ride a personal watercraft without it. The third piece of safety equipment that riders need is a wetsuit or similar protective clothing. Sometimes after a fall, the personal watercraft is completely overturned. When this happens, follow the instructions on the decal at the rear of the craft. The decal shows the direction to roll it to an upright position. Sooner or later, you'll have to board the craft from the water. It's a good idea to practice reboarding with someone else around to see if you can do it alone. And finally, make sure that any child you take with you is big enough to ride safely. Your passenger should be able to securely hold on to you or to the handholds while keeping both feet firmly on the footrest. Never seat a passenger in front of you. Now let's take a look at some rules regarding responsible and courteous operation. Some people have such a good time on their personal watercraft that they don't realize they might be getting on other people's nerves. A common complaint about personal watercraft is irresponsible behavior. In some places, it's gotten so bad that laws have been passed to limit personal watercraft use. So the best way to ensure that you have a place to ride is to do your part to minimize the nuisance factor. Hot dogging is dangerous as well as annoying. Jumping the wake of a passing boat or riding too close to another boat creates special risks. It's restricted and even prohibited in some states. One danger with wake jumping is visibility. The boat making the wake may block your view of oncoming traffic, and at the same time, make you invisible to them. Because personal watercraft moves so fast, operators need to constantly watch out for other vessels or objects in the water. It's also stressful for boat operators to have personal watercraft constantly running close to their boats. Vary your location. Riding around in one small area will eventually irritate people nearby, so keep moving around and avoid congregating with other personal watercraft. Keep your distance from camping or residential areas, especially in the early morning hours. Avoid maneuvers that lift the noisy engine exhaust out of the water, and don't modify your engine exhaust system if it creates more noise. Remember that you need a minimum depth of 2.5 feet to safely operate your craft. When you get into water that's too shallow, debris can get caught in your water intake, damaging your engine as well as the environment. And speaking of the environment, be aware that high-speed operation in very shallow water or near the shore can cause erosion. Many personal watercraft accidents are caused by inexperienced operators. So before you allow anyone to operate your craft, let them know that they're operating a boat and have the same responsibilities as any other boat operator. Your attitude towards safe operation will influence their behavior. Check that they meet the minimum age and education requirements for personal watercraft operation in your state. Make sure they know basic boating safety information and navigation rules. While still on shore, show them the basic operating procedures, including starting and reboarding, and remind them that power is required for steering control. It's also a good idea to let beginning riders start out where there's little traffic. They may concentrate on riding instead of the surrounding traffic in the area. Emphasize the need for being alert. If you take care of these basic responsibilities, you'll ensure safe and enjoyable use of your personal watercraft. These are just the basic rules for operating your personal watercraft and sharing it with others. Study your manual for the regulations specific to your state. Next, we'll look at the legal requirements for boating. Over the years, the federal government has developed a number of legal requirements to ensure safe boating. In addition, each state has its own set of rules and regulations. To make sure you comply with all the laws in your state, it's best to consult your manual. But right now, let's look at some basic requirements that apply across the country. Wherever you live, you'll need to register your boat. You need a certificate of number, also called a boat registration, and a validation decal to legally operate your boat on public waters. Common sense tells you that negligent and reckless behavior on the water is neither courteous nor prudent. It's also illegal. Often, the first law that people break before committing negligent or reckless acts is consuming alcohol while operating a boat. Alcohol impairs vision, alertness, and reaction time. It impairs your judgment, and it's particularly deadly out on the water. One alcoholic drink while boating can have the same effect as 3 on land. Alcohol is a contributing factor in many boating accidents, including about 1/3 of all fatalities. So be sure to designate a boat operator if your group consumes alcohol on the water. Let's look at some examples of illegal operation. Boating in restricted areas that have been clearly marked by buoys or signs. Letting passengers ride on the bow, gunwale, transom, seatbacks, or anywhere else there's a chance they may fall overboard. Operating at speeds that aren't reasonable and prudent based on boating traffic and other conditions. And causing personal injury or property damage with a boat wake in posted no-wake areas. The law also tells you to reduce speed when you approach a swimming area, a shoreline, or a boat where people are fishing, water skiing, diving, or anchored. And always stay clear of diver down flags. You'll also need to remember it's illegal to anchor your boat in the traveled portion of a river or channel, where it will interfere with passing boats. And finally, it's illegal to attach a boat to a buoy, beacon, light, or any other navigation aid unless it's designated as a mooring buoy. And of course, it's illegal to move navigation aids or tamper with them in any way. In a post-9/11 world, there's a real threat to some of our nation's waterfront facilities. In many cases, safety zones or exclusionary zones have been established around power plants, locks, dams, and critical port facilities. As a responsible boater, it's your duty to respect these safety zones and obey the orders of security patrols. Avoid commercial port operation areas, especially those that involve military, cruise line, or petroleum facilities. When you're on open water, stay clear of U.S. naval vessels. Don't approach within 100 yards and slow to minimum speed within 500 yards of any military ship. Don't anchor beneath bridges or in the channel, and keep a sharp eye out for anything that looks peculiar or out of the ordinary. Report all activities that seem suspicious. In an emergency, call 911. The Coast Guard's America's Waterway Watch also maintains a 24-hour hotline, 1-877-249-2824. let's look at the equipment that you're required to have on board. One piece of equipment that every boater must carry is a life jacket. More specifically, a U.S. Coast Guard approved personal flotation device, or PFD. This is the most important piece of equipment on your boat, and here's why. Approximately 70% of all boating fatalities are drownings, and 9 out of 10 drowning victims were not wearing a life jacket. That's why you're legally required to have a PFD for each person on board. There are several types to choose from. Where you're boating and what you're doing determines which one you choose. For instance, this is a Type 1 PFD. It's an offshore or seagoing vest. It'll keep your head up when you're unconscious, even in rough water. Type 2 vests are designed for calmer inland water, like lakes. However, they may not turn you face up if you're unconscious. PFDs are mandatory for people being towed by a boat. PFDs are also mandatory for anyone operating a personal watercraft. You'll see a lot of them wearing one of these Type 3 vests. Type 3 vests are also preferred by fishermen because they allow freedom of movement. But be aware that a Type 3 will not turn you face up in the water. Some people say they don't wear their PFDs because they're too hot or too bulky, but that's not an excuse anymore with this inflatable Type 3 PFD. You put it on just like any other life vest, but it doesn't inflate until you pull this cord. Because you do have to pull the cord, this type of PFD is not a good choice for activities where there's even a small chance of being knocked unconscious. Activities like riding a personal watercraft or wakeboarding. However, there are versions of this vest that will inflate automatically if you fall into the water. Just remember that children should not use inflatable PFDs. The U.S. Coast Guard has approved these vests only for people 16 and older. This is a Type 4 throwable PFD. If you're operating a boat 16 feet or longer, you must have one of these on board. Type 5 PFDs are special use devices designed for specific activities. One Type 5 used for recreational boaters is this belt-style inflatable PFD. For those of you worried about unwanted tan lines, this PFD is a great option. This PFD is U.S. Coast Guard approved only for people 16 and older. PFDs come in children's sizes, and it's important to keep PFDs on all children at all times. Be sure to select a PFD that's designed to keep their head above water. Make sure the life jacket fits your child properly each time it's put on. After fastening the life jacket, lift the child by the shoulders of the jacket. The child's chin and ears should not slip through the PFD. To encourage your children to wear their PFD, put their name on it, and make sure you always wear your own. After all, you never know when you might end up in the water. You can read more about PFDs in your manual to find out which one's best for you. The next priority for all boats is a fire extinguisher. Why is that important? Take a look at this. A sudden fire, particularly one that breaks out in an engine compartment, can literally devour a boat. In a matter of minutes, it can burn right down to the waterline. That's why every boat, and that includes personal watercraft, must have a fire extinguisher. Always check to make sure it's in working order. And of course, be sure to keep your fire extinguisher where it's easy to get to, just in case of an emergency. We've dealt with navigation lights in a previous segment, but it's worth repeating. The law requires you to have proper navigation lights and to use them whenever you're away from the dock between sunset and sunrise and whenever visibility is poor. You're also required to use an all-round white light between sunset and sunrise whenever you're adrift or anchored away from dock. To find out which lights are required for your boat, refer to Chapter 4 in your manual. Signaling devices are also important. In periods of reduced visibility or dangerous situations, it's essential to have some type of sound-producing device. The louder, the better. Along with sound signals, many boaters who travel on federally controlled waters, such as coastal waters, are required to carry visual distress signals. The requirements for distress signals vary, depending on the size of the craft and the time of day you're boating. Visual distress signals are classified as day signals and night signals. One type is a pyrotechnic device, such as a flare, and the other is a non-pyrotechnic, such as a flag. Check your manual to see what signaling devices you should have on board. Every now and then you might encounter someone who's in trouble on the water, perhaps displaying a distress signal. Often, people just have engine trouble, but it might also mean pulling a stranded boater out of the water or getting help in more serious emergencies. Most people are naturally inclined to stop and render aid. When there's serious injury involved, it's the law. If you're involved in an accident yourself that results in death, injury, the disappearance of someone, or substantial property damage, you're obligated to report it as quickly as possible. One of the reasons we like to get out on the water is to get away from it all. The scenic beauty of a lake or coastal water is relaxing and renewing. So we all have to be vigilant in keeping these areas as pristine as possible. Fragile ecosystems can be upset by the introduction of new plants or animals. So as your day ends, empty your bait bucket on land. Don't release live bait into a body of water. Inspect your vessel and trailer and remove any plants or animals. Drain your motor, live well, and bilge on land before leaving the area. Rinse your hull, propeller, and trailer equipment. Air dry for as long as possible. It's also illegal to dump untreated waste, oil, or trash into the water. One simple way to make sure that you comply with all the requirements for safe boating is to request a vessel safety check by the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary or the U.S. Power Squadrons. The examinations are free, and they won't give you a ticket if your boat's not legal. They'll also make sure you're equipped for just about any boating emergency, a subject that we'll cover in the next segment. Cruising the lake on a beautiful day, no one really thinks about boating accidents, but they do happen, and all too often, they're fatal. Most boating fatalities occur in open boats, on inland waters, in the afternoon, when the weather and visibility are good. Because most accidents are the result of a simple mistake, nearly all accidents are easily preventable. That's where risk management comes in. Simply put, risk management means to recognize potentially dangerous situations before they happen and take steps to prevent them. Here's an example. Because most fatalities are a result of drowning, wearing a life jacket is the top risk management precaution. With today's PFD options, there's no excuse for not wearing one. Bear in mind that simply being out on the water fatigues you and reduces your alertness and reaction time. Boating stressors such as the sun, motion, noise, and vibration of the vessel make you tire more rapidly on the water. Dehydration can also take a toll, so be sure to stay hydrated when you're out. However, the number one factor that reduces alertness and reaction time on the water is alcohol. Combine it with all the other stressors, and you have a potentially deadly recipe. Alcohol contributes to many boating accidents and to about 1/3 of all fatalities.
At 3 o'clock in the morning, my husband and I were awakened by a policeman and a chaplain knocking at our front door. As soon as I saw him, I knew that it was something bad. And the only question I had was, which child is it?
The boat carrying Kay's 22-year-old daughter, Debbie, was hit from behind as it idled on a lake. The other operator had been drinking at a lakeside bar. In news stories, Debbie Rock's name joined a growing list of boating fatalities.
She was not just a number on the coroner's report. She was a real person, and she had a lot to give. Bad things happen to really great people, and they don't have to. It helps me to make Debbie's death not in vain. You know, she lives on through my being able to talk about what happened to her, and she leaves a legacy of trying to tell people that to be responsible and to not drink or drive any motorized vehicle.
It's because of tragedies like this that most states vigorously enforce laws that prohibit drinking and boating. About 70% of all boating fatalities involve drownings, and almost all of these victims were not wearing a life jacket. In an emergency, you need to be able to get to your life jackets quickly. If they are stowed away, still in their plastic wrappers, or under other equipment, they will do you no good. The best precaution is to simply wear your life jacket. You may not have much warning that you are about to end up in the water, and a life jacket is very difficult to put on once you are in the water. Just try doing it and you'll see. Despite ideal weather conditions, passengers fall overboard, and many boats capsize or swamp. This causes more than half of all boating fatalities. You can minimize the risk of capsizing, swamping, and falling overboard. Just practice some simple precautions. Capsizing usually occurs when a boat operator takes a sudden or sharp high-speed turn, so always maintain a prudent speed. Swamping is often the result of overloading or boating in hazardous weather conditions. Pay attention to your boat's load capacity and the weather. Keep your passengers from going overboard. Don't let them sit on the gunwale or transom, stand, or lean out of the boat while underway. Another important way to prevent accidents is to stay alert. Failure to stay alert and pay attention to your surroundings are major causes of collisions. Many boats have burned to the waterline needlessly. Either the boater failed to have a fire extinguisher on board or simply didn't know how to deal with a fire. If the engine catches fire while your boat is underway, turn the bow into the wind and stop the boat. Grab your extinguisher. Pull the pin, aim the discharge at the base of the flames, and spray the fire, sweeping back and forth. Remember, never use water on a gasoline, oil, grease, or electrical fire. Water will spread a gas fire and will conduct electricity. During cold weather, a lot of people enjoy hunting, fishing, and other activities. But it's during this time that falling into the water poses a serious threat. When you first enter the water, the initial cold shock can cause involuntary gasping, hyperventilation, and panic. Try to control your breathing. Hold on to something if you can, and stay still until your breathing settles down. focus on floating with your head above water until the cold shock passes. In cold water, you can lose dexterity in 10 to 15 minutes, so make sure your PFD is fastened securely. Try to reboard your boat, even if it's swamped or capsized. Keep as much of your body out of the water as possible. Don't take your clothes off unless absolutely necessary. Remember, clothes trap heat and can help you float. If you can't reboard, a PFD will allow you to stay afloat, and it will also help you to insulate your body. Be sure to keep your head and neck out of the water. An invisible killer that attacks boaters is carbon monoxide gas. You can't see, smell, or taste it, but only a few breaths can be fatal. So keep air moving through your boat at all times when it is running. Don't tie up to another vessel that is running. Its exhaust can release carbon monoxide into your boat. If your boat has a cabin area, be sure and install a carbon monoxide detector. Never swim around the swim platform while the engine is running. 1 or 2 breaths in this area can be fatal. One way to avoid disaster is by watching the weather. Weather can change suddenly and create unexpected situations for boat operators. Even meteorologists have trouble predicting changes in the weather, so stay alert. If you get caught in severe weather, check your PFD to be sure it's properly fastened. Reduce speed, but keep enough power to maintain headway and steering. Have your passengers sit on the floor close to the center line for their own safety and to make the boat more stable. If there's lightning, disconnect all electrical equipment and stay clear of metal objects. If possible, head for the nearest shore that's safe to approach. Point your bow into the waves at a 45-degree angle. Personal watercraft should head directly into the waves. Some folks just use their boat to cruise, but many of us use our boat for sporting activities. Know the do's and don'ts of each activity to help avoid accidents. Pulling someone behind a boat may not look tricky, but to do it safely, you'll need to develop good habits. This is true whether the person you tow is on a board, skis, or a tube. First, you need to have a group of at least 3. It makes good sense to have an observer on board, and in many states, it's required. All towing sports take a lot of room, so pick an area that's not congested. Stay clear of beaches, docks, and swimming areas. It's also a good idea to check out the area ahead of time for hazards, such as shallow water or obstructions. A personal flotation device is a must. Make sure it's a U.S. Coast Guard approved PFD, designed for active water sports. Before your boarder gets in the water, shut off the engine. When the boarder is clear of the stern and ready to go, restart the engine. Power forward slowly until the tow rope is taut. By the way, the rope should never be wrapped or tied around the boarder. That could lead to disaster. If there's no traffic ahead, apply enough power to raise the boarder out of the water. The person being towed determines cruising speed by using hand signals. Thumbs up for more speed, thumbs down for less speed. Be especially alert when you're towing anyone. Keep track of the boats around you and stay at least 2 rope lengths from hazards or the shoreline. And of course, never buzz or spray another boat or swimmer. It's illegal. When the boarder drops or falls, circle slowly to return the tow line or pick the boarder up. Some states require boat operators to display an orange or red flag to signal to other boaters that someone is in the water. Boarders should hold their board out of the water when downed. It makes them more visible. As you approach, be sure to keep the boarder on your side of the boat for best visibility. Before you let the boarder approach the boat, shut off the engine. Once everyone's on board, retrieve the tow line. Remember that these are all daytime activities. It's both dangerous and illegal to tow someone after dark. It's also dangerous to consume alcohol and get behind a boat. You need quick reflexes and a clear head to stay out of trouble. Many hunters use vessels for duck hunting or to get to their favorite hunting grounds. If you use a vessel to hunt, be sure to follow these practices. Wear a PFD. It's essential because being active in a small boat increases your risk of capsizing or falling overboard. To avoid capsizing, keep weight in the boat evenly distributed. Be careful not to overload the vessel with gear or people, and bring along only well-trained dogs that can remain still in a boat. If you're hunting in cold weather, be sure to dress in several layers to avoid hypothermia. And never fire shots or release arrows until the vessel is stopped, the motor is turned off, and the vessel is secured or properly anchored. If you fish from a boat, think of yourself first as a vessel operator. Know and follow all safe boating laws and requirements. Pay attention to the capacity plate and don't overload your boat. And most importantly, wear a life jacket. Anglers using boats can be at risk. Unfortunately, anglers capsizing or falling overboard are common fatal boating accidents. Other operators who encounter fishing boats should slow down, give them a wide berth, and avoid making a wake. We've looked at some of the most common activities you might be involved in with your boat, but there are many others: scuba diving, swimming, windsurfing, and sailing, to name just a few. This wraps up the video program. We hope you've learned a bit about the responsibilities you signed on for when you take control of a boat or personal watercraft. First and foremost, you are responsible for the safety of yourself and your passengers. You also have a duty to others on the water and an obligation to protect the environment. Always remember, boat safe.